Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Unpacking Articles. The article we're going to unpack today provides a lot of food for thought on some terms that we use so much that we don't even think about them. And the article is called Saying What We Mean, Making a Case for Language Acquisition to Become Language Development. And this article is based on a plenary speech that Larsen-Freeman, the author, gave at a conference. And she gives 12 reasons why the term development is more appropriate than acquisition. She is trying to make the case that we should talk about SLD, Second Language Development, as opposed to SLA, Second Language Acquisition. And I will paraphrase and synthesize those 12 reasons here. The very first one is quite powerful, and it is that the word acquisition itself refers to buying something, to getting something, and thus it objectifies languages. In other words, language is treated as something that you get, that you obtain. But that's not the case, says Larsen-Freeman. You don't just get little pieces of language as if you were acquiring collectibles. And this reminds me of the contrast between learning through the language versus learning about the language. Instead of treating the language as an object to be studied, why don't we treat language as a means of expression? Plus, getting or buying something implies that we know at some point we have it. And that's really difficult to do when it comes to language. I think we can all agree with this quote. Establishing when something is acquired, defined as available for use at another time, is complicated due to the commonly observed fluctuations in performance. And this is definitely true, and it's an issue for a lot of researchers. How do you determine that something has been acquired? What counts as evidence of acquisition? Many times in many studies, any sort of evidence of acquisition is actually evidence of performance. Another set of reasons why the author advocates for saying development as opposed to acquisition is related to the common assumption in the field that there is a target language, singular. And Larsen-Freeman argues that it's problematic because language is not homogeneous or static. So the term development is much more appropriate because it captures and reflects the notions of change, adaptation, innovation, transformation, variation, and all of those things are intrinsically related to language. And she also points out that this idea of a target and a target language tends to imply a comparison with monolingual native speakers. And that's also problematic because it perpetuates the deficit view of second language learners, that they're less than or that they fall short of native-like competence. Our goal, our target, is not, or should not be, to replicate the outcome of monolingual language acquisition. So should we even continue saying target language? Well, for Larsen-Freeman, that's another problematic term that may need to be reconsidered. She says, since language is continually changing, even the term target language in language teaching is misleading because the target is always moving. And so if language is continually evolving, then can we ever say that the process of acquisition is ever complete? Is there an end state? Are we ever done acquiring a language? And this is related to the other group of reasons why Larsen-Freeman says that development is more appropriate than acquisition. It has to do with the process itself. And when we unpacked the term acquisition in an earlier video, we did say that it is indeed a process, a journey. But Larsen-Freeman says that the word development underscores the evolving, complex, dynamic nature of the process even more than acquisition. Learners are not just passive recipients of language, but rather active participants in the process. And thus, the word development highlights agency on the part of the learner. And I absolutely love this quote. Learners or users of a language actively transform their linguistic world. They do not merely conform to it. And I also really love that Larsen-Freeman contrasts meaning making and acquiring forms. In a lot of research, the notion of acquisition is tied to acquisition of forms, which to me overshadows meaning. This contrast resonated so much with me. As you know, I have emphasized in many videos that we should make meaning a priority. The message we want to convey determines the forms we use and not the other way around. And so the takeaway is related to this notion of terms and perspectives. Larsen-Freeman acknowledges that it's quite unlikely that SLA, second language acquisition, as a field will change its name. The acronym SLA is so well established that it's unlikely to go away anytime soon. However, even though the terms might not change, that doesn't mean our perspectives shouldn't change. So I completely agree with Larsen-Freeman on two things. First, development is indeed better. It's much more encompassing and a better way of reflecting the learner's experience in the process. I also agree with Larsen-Freeman that the term acquisition is not going to go away anytime soon, and there might be a place to talk about acquisition in some contexts. But in the case of language instruction, of what we do in the classroom, I think language development is indeed what we're aiming for. That's just my take on it. As usual, I encourage you to read the original and draw your own conclusions. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time.